And hello everybody. Welcome to Flight Past. This is the podcast style stream where we look at historical events from the air to get a better understanding. And this is part 17 of our look into Operation Tonga. And so if you haven't seen the other parts, please look back and have a look at it. Today I'm going to be leading a discussion on the conclusion of the Merville Battery Assault. In the previous episodes, we looked at how the 9th Battalion of the 3rd Parachute Brigade dropped here at the drop zones to the north of Merville. We discussed Major George Smith and his battery reconnaissance party, and we also talked briefly about Major Alan Parry and his rendezvous party. And we got to the point where Lt Col Terence Otway had landed and had moved up to the rendezvous point. Now what I'm going to do is, whilst I'm talking, I'm just going to fly a little bit, hand fly this a little bit around the site. So the location is the Merville Battery, and as I say, this is part 17 of Operation Tonga. For those of you new to the channel, what I tend to do is, using Microsoft Flight Simulator, we have a look at some of the major historical events from history, and we have a look at the terrain and the heights of the terrain and how geomorphology and terrain affect the battlefield and the decisions made on those days. So the time and date, we've got to 2:45 in the morning, and we're at the Merville Battery. This is an area to the east of the River Orne, which you can see there on the horizon, middle horizon distance. And down below is where you can see the Merville Battery coming into sight. We're just going to be flying over it in a few seconds. It's this group of bunkers down below. If you are interested in history, I presume you are, otherwise you wouldn't be watching, you can join me on Discord, and this allows you to come down to some of the posts that we've made. You'll see, you'll see a timeline for most of the events that we're doing. And this one is on D-Day, and you'll be able to follow along what's going on. If you I want to stress is that I'm leading a discussion on these. I'm not lecturing you, so because I'm flying live and talking off the cuff, I will inevitably make some errors, but that is okay. You can join in the discussion and down below. And correct any information you think I've got wrong. So you can see here, this is a section that we've done on the Merville. Otway moves his men forward to assault position firm base at 2:45. So you'll be able to come on here and you can add on anything that you feel is fitting. You'll be able to also be able to see future subjects. It won't just be on World War II. You'll be able to come on and you'll see these research sections. You can click on there and give any information that you can, which we can add to the stream when we get to it. So that's Discord. You'll find the link in the profile. Right, so I'm just going to put this onto autopilot. Might be a little bit easier for me to talk. Just set the altitude. Yeah, it's doing this thing again. Get a little bit frustrated sometimes with this autopilot. Okay, so let's start talking, pick up where we got off from last time. And we're going to be talking a lot about this guy here, Lt Col Terence Otway. And we left him at the forward firm base, they called it. Now, we discussed that this area here was probably the rendezvous point, and I suspect that this copse of trees here, which marked the formation, the area where they formed up for the firm base to attack the battery, which is here. I've got a little picture of the map, so you can see if I were coming in from the bottom right on this little drawing, we've got the RV points and the firm base, and then we can see that the main assault will come up this side, and then there's a diversionary assault round this way into the battery from the north east. So just keep that in mind when you're when we're talking about this. Some of the areas where things are happening are guesswork here. So if anyone knows, then please put a comment in the section below. Now, let's get to this forward firm base. He's arrived here. He's met up with Major George Smith, and George Smith has returned from his recce of the battery to tell him that there's no issues. Major Smith, he was part of this, I think they called it the Trowbridge Party, which was the battery reconnaissance party. And Major Alan Parry was in charge of a taping party, which was to basically lay tape from this firm base up to the battery where George Smith has shown the best places to breach the battery. It's at this point as well that Captain Greenway tells Otway of the state of the drop. 600 men in the 9th Parachute Battalion dropped in this area, but by this was at about probably 1 o'clock. By 2:45 in the morning, there's reports that anything between 50, I think it started off as 50, and by the time Otway decides to move out, he estimates he has about 150 men. Now, we discussed the battery. The troops stationed here, we estimated probably about 200 troops are based in and around the battery and in the villages surrounding. So he's now lost his weight of numbers advantage. He decides, he has his chat with his Batman, and decides to carry on. And he decides that he can't go for his original plan, which was for 4 breaches into the wire surrounding the battery, and that he could only go for 2. He didn't have the numbers that he wanted. He wanted at least 100 men per section, so he could only really do 2. He didn't have enough Bangalore torpedoes. We discussed earlier that the gliders that are coming in, 3 of the gliders, actually it might be 5 of the gliders that are carrying in the heavy equipment hadn't made it. So he was lacking in the equipment to storm the battery. He decides to give the job of attacking the battery to Major Dyer. He was to lead the assault with his C Company. But Major Dyer hadn't arrived, so in his absence, then he gave the command to Major Alan Parry, and he decides that the assault will be made with a composite force between A and C companies. Initially, approximately about a total of 50 men. But we know that that number increases a little bit as he waits for more people to turn up. They report about forming up ready for the assault, and they get spotted by machine guns and fired upon. And the estimated position of the machine guns, it's difficult to say where they were. It's described as being on both flanks. I've seen reports that there was a machine gun over here was firing at them, and another one to the south, which kind of makes some sort of sense. And this Otway immediately tells Sergeant Knight to rush over to neutralize these machine gun positions. Sergeant Knight was going to be the guy who would command or be involved with the diversionary attack from this side as well later on. So Otway decides that this is time to move his men forwards. He moves in this direction, and you can see in this field here probably remnants. These dots are probably remnants of bomb craters, because the RAF had overshot the Merville Battery, and he uses these bomb craters to advance his assault party up towards the start-off point. Because he didn't have as many men, as I say, he decides that he's going to use 2 breaching positions in the wire, and he, with the Bangla doors, he had to spread them out, blow them up, and then he would use his men as almost a human sort of mattress that the others could run across. Talk about these machine guns that were giving them problems on their flanks. I mentioned Sid Knight. He moved off to the north because he was going to be part of the diversionary attack. And the machine gun to the south was attacked by Sergeant Patrick McGeever and Corporal James McGuinness. And they took the only Vickers that they had and to silence it. And that was probably, the machine gun was somewhere in this area here. Sergeant Knight moved around into this position here, and they basically loosed off everything they could. They, at this point, Otway's men had moved towards the casements from this side, so Sergeant Knight made sure that he was firing to the east. Basically, Otway says that he didn't want to risk hitting any of the assault force, so he was just making up a lot of noise. They threw grenades, made lots of noise, and made the Germans in the battery come out to find what was happening. They kept moving around in this area so that they couldn't be spotted in any concentration. And to make it appear that there was more numbers than there were over here, because at the end of the day, I think there was 4 or 5 guys only over here on this side. So we've now come to, I believe, the formation, the planning has taken almost an hour and a half, and we get to about 4:30 in the morning. Now, remember, Otway's on a timer here, because if he doesn't get this assault done, I believe it was by about 5:30, then the naval bombardment would finish the job, or try to finish the job for him. As we mentioned, the suspected guns in this were 115 millimeter, and that had a range of about 8 miles. So it was deemed that the landings here at Sword Beach would be threatened by this battery. So 4 o'clock comes along, and Otway is waiting now for the appearance of the Horsa gliders that will be bringing in the volunteers, something, I think about 50 volunteers of the Coup de Man party. Now, this to me is probably one of the absolute bravest things I've ever heard. Probably of anything on D-Day. We're talking about a group of men who have volunteered, a bit like Major John Howard and the bridges over there. But these guys have volunteered to land in a glider inside this battery complex. You have presumably there's a Dakota or something there. So there, we've discussed the bravery of D Company and their approach, but these guys are trying to actually crash land on top of a battery that is could possibly have anything from 100 to 200 people inside, and attack these concrete casements that are here. It's absolutely mind-boggling brave, and I thought we'd just try and repeat that and see if we can get anywhere near close to that. So I'm going to put out the lights. We're going to kill these strobes, landing lights, all these sort of things. And like we did with D Company, we'll try to reenact these events. So I'm just going to fly back out to sea, and then we'll come back in again. So the gliders are planned to land at 4:30 in the morning, and their Lieutenant Colonel Otway's job was to assist the gliders by, at the same time as they're going in, they'd be firing flares, Very lights, in order to help the gliders to see the objective. Now there was 3 gliders planned on landing here. One of them, very early on after takeoff, lost its tow rope and had to go back. 2 came in. 1 crashed. One crashed about 2 or 3 miles away. Couldn't find the thing, and the other one, as we find, also crashed. Okay, so we'll cut the engine here, and we're going to try and find this battery. Now, Otway says that at 4:30 he could see a glider circling above, trying to find the battery to land on, but because they didn't have any fairy lights, flares, they couldn't signal to the glider where it was that their objective was. And this has got lights. I can't see where this thing is. If this is set to the correct moonlight as well, I think, for D-Day, and you kind of just got to sort of guess. So we're searching here, trying to find the battery. So we obviously can't, and this is what happens on the actual day. The glider overshoots, and as you can see on the map, it lands or crash lands probably to the south, the southeast from the target. Okay. So let's find out where we are. Let's put the lights on. And see if we can see where we are. So we have landed a long way away. This is the we've landed on the drop zone, so we probably would have survived. But the real glider, as I say, was circling over the battery, trying to identify an Otway who was here on the southeastern side. Got spotted. Eventually, the glider couldn't see it, and it flew this way, and it's believed there was an orchard. As you can see on the map, it's to the south of the firm base, so it's presumably maybe in this area here, and the glider crashes. So Otway realizes that he's probably not going to get the coup de main from the glider force, so he gives the order. He can't wait any longer. He gives the order, and then Major Parry blows a whistle, and the guys blow the Bangalore torpedoes, and this blows up the two of the approaches that Major Smith had identified and the taping party had identified. This blows up a gap in the wire, and then Otway says, get in, and the attack begins. He says that there was booby traps in the wires, mines were going off, they charge in, and some of them laid down on the wire to act as a mattress, and then these two groups, it's difficult to say how many were. It could be anything of 30 to 50, maybe more. They run in and start fanning out. The casements, he describes that they had steel doors on the front. Sorry, there was steel doors on the back, of the casements. And so the only way to get in to these casements was through the front. He recalls he went in as well, followed people in, and he could see. He says he recalls that he could see Sergeant Knight, who he believed had actually come in through the main gate. He reports that there's a machine gun fire coming from a tower that he had to keep running, moving around and avoiding. And the assault proceeds. Hand-to-hand fighting happens. Lieutenant Mike Dowling comes back to him and reports that the battery's been taken. And Otway replies, has the guns been destroyed? And Dowling replies, I think so, which is then gets a prompt reprimand and told to go back and make sure that the guns are taken out. He reports during this as well, there's the glider crash to the southeast has actually distracted the Germans, and there's a battle going on around that. And the occupants of that glider, the survivors, were engaged with a platoon of Germans. So, in terms of what actually happened in the actual assault, Number 12 platoon was commanded by Lieutenant Alan Jefferson, and he headed for number 1 gun, which is described as being on the extreme right. Now, I'm not quite familiar with which one of these is the extreme right, but let me know if you know. And he's injured by attacking this, but he gets shot in the leg. But he watches his platoon storm into the emplacement. Other notable casualties: Major Parry is shot in the leg as well as he enters the battery. And remember, he was commanding the second breach. And George Adset at this point is killed. Parry applies a tourniquet to his legs, and he limps to the number 1 gun that Alan Jefferson's attacked, and he gets there just as the Germans are being escorted out with their hands up. When Major Parry arrives at the emplacements, this is when he discovers that the guns are not the 150mm ones that they expected, but were he describes them as old-fashioned field pieces. So it turns out that the guns aren't the same caliber, the caliber they thought they were. and number 3 and number 4 gun emplacements are dealt with in a similar fashion. Major Parry orders that these the breech blocks be destroyed using plastic explosive, and he says that that is carried out. Now, there's a controversy around this. We'll get to that in a minute. So when Mike Dowling Lieutenant Mike Dowling has reported to Otway that they have been destroyed, Otway has to he has to go back in and check. Because a mortar lands close to Dowling, and him and his Batman are killed. So he leads the remainder of his force back into the battery to mop up what he calls the bits of resistance. He reports that the machine guns were opening up on them. There was a chaos going on. And that's when but he does say that when the Germans realized that they were paratroopers, they would put their hands up. He says that, I think there was only 23 prisoners taken. Most of the garrison were either killed or wounded. And when he gets to the emplacements, he finds that what's happened is that the troops have put grenades down the barrels, but because this is really hard metal, the effect of these grenades on the guns is minimal. He says he also takes out the breech blocks and throws them away, so they couldn't fire without getting new breech blocks. Effectively, what he's saying is that he didn't have the equipment to destroy these guns properly. And what he's done here is technically he's not destroyed them, but he's delayed he's delayed them coming back into action. After this, he recalls that the action has died down, and he wanders around the area, looking at some of the wounded, and talking to the medic who was looking after Captain Hudson, who'd been injured. So with time moving on, Otway decides that the best thing to do is to gather up his prisoners, and he orders them to basically walk in front of him through the minefield. He calls it them showing us the paths through the minefield, but well, we can guess what he's doing. At this point, he describes that the Germans begin to shell and mortar the position from Franceville, the flak positions at Franceville, which is this area here. And he said that the shelling had completely disregarded the fact that there were Germans here, so they just knew the paratroopers are here. They wanted to stop them from destroying the guns, so they started pounding the position. So again, it's difficult to know how many men were involved. Reports, as I say, vary from 50 to 150. He does mention that afterwards that 150 men who actually attacked, when they came out there were 65 to 70 that were still on their feet, and the rest were wounded or killed. So they capture a German medic in their prisoners, and to Otway reports that to the German medic's credit, he goes back into the battery to get his medical supplies, and begins to treat the wounded. He says that the padre, who was hanging back, he went off, he says, to what he calls a local village with some French men, and he comes back with some trucks and German staff cars, in which they put the wounded in. He draws a red cross on the front of, in order to get to the 6th Airborne Division, which was forming its headquarters at Ranville, which is this village down here to the south. So he hoped that the Red Cross would give them passage. So the guns turned out not to be the ones that they thought. They turned out to be World War I era 100mm field howitzers, and these were Czech built, and they had an effective range basically of about just over 5 miles. So the Germans actually you were using them more to sort of cover the entrance and the port of Ouistreham, and cover the beach along here, but didn't really have the effective range to affect the far end, the middle to far end of Salt. But that doesn't take away the bravery that these guys showed in storming this battery, because they weren't to know. What happens then? Well, he when at this point he's satisfied. He says he's satisfied that the guns are out of action, and he orders his signal officer to fire a pistol which emitted a yellow smoke, and he also says that the signal officer releases a pigeon that is sent to London. Now, this is to signal to the ship. The yellow smoke is the signal to the ships out in the channel, not to fire. It turns out, I believe, that I'm just trying at the moment to find out what the name of the ship was. Bear with me. It turns out this ship, it's around about 5, I believe. Let me find it. Yeah, so he fires the smoke. It's written here at 4:45. Just trying to find this. Yeah, so and the signal is out to a cruiser called HMS Arethusa. Arethusa was going to attack or open fire on the battery at 5 a.m. if they hadn't seen this signal. I believe that the cruiser, even though the smoke is sent up, the cruiser doesn't see the smoke. But because the battery isn't firing, the commander of the HMS Arethusa decides not to bombard the place. I mean, he may even could see that the Germans were bombarding or mortaring them from the beach. But he decides, because he hasn't seen the signal and there's nothing coming, but more importantly, there's no actual firing from the battery, he doesn't fire on it. We're getting towards daybreak, and Otway orders his remaining force to withdraw to the rendezvous point, and then his orders were then from there to occupy high ground close to the village Le Plain. So let me just try and find this place. Le Plain. Let's see if I can find. Okay, so can't quite. Okay, there we go. I think. So Le Plain is to the south, in a village called I think it's called Le Ampheville, which is just to the northwest of Breville. Now, so the Breville is on the ridge, so that this is drop zone. This is the drop zone here for the 7th Battalion. This is the Breville Ridge here, and Ampheville is it's this village, I believe, here. So let's have a look at the ground. He describes it as his orders were to occupy the high ground close to the village of Plan and capture a small naval radar station en route. And because he's only got 80 fit men, he ignores the capture of the radar station. So this looks like it's probably the area that he's told to move to. You've got the Pegasus Bridge and Horsa Bridge here. This is Ramville. This is where the 7th Battalion is forming up their headquarters. So it makes sense that they will probably, the idea is to, once these coup de main operations have occurred, they bring the paratroopers back from these outlying areas, and they bring them back to the higher ground that surrounds the bridgehead. So the bridgehead is kind of using this. You can just sort of make out this ridge sort of starts in this area here. You got the river here, but you can see this slight rise here. This high ground, as you can see, you've got Great views down to Sword Beach, Ouistreham. You've got the approach to Caen across the river. So this is the ground that was needed to be held. So this is they call it Le Plain, and it's Amfreville. And we're talking now time-wise, anything after 5 o'clock in the morning. So that makes sense. They're pulling back their troops. They're using the drop zones. The drop zones over here, this is Varaville, were used to attack the battery, and also to use as a jumping off point to attack the bridges and destroy the bridges on the River Dives, which is over here. This, you can see why there's grumblings by the Canadian Parachute Battalion that they felt that they were stuck out on a limb over in this direction. But this river below us here has a number of bridges that are to be taken out, as far as the hope, I think, was down to Esquiville. So we're talking the bridges down to Troan, which is in this area here. They want to capture this ridge that you can see running down, and this in order to protect deny these heights from the Germans, because then they will be able to artillery observe down onto the bridges across the Orne. And so this is the Breville Ridge here, and basically this road and all this access here becomes the front line, and the Germans will be pushing up here. They know that this ridge is important, because this was what will enable them to command the battlefield down to and over the river. Okay, so we're just approaching an hour, so I'll start wrapping it up. Just a heads up of what happens in afterwards. They end up at finding some stiff resistance at Amfreville. They get relieved on the 7th of June by number 3 Commando. The wounded, many of the wounded, they have to leave in a farm close to the battery, and they were being looked after by German medical orderlies. They then, these injured, which were left up here, they are rescued by the battalion padre John Gwinnett, who ferries them to the field ambulance, parachute field ambulance at Le Mesnil. Let me just find out where that is for you. Le Mesnil. yeah, so Le Mesnil is down here. So he ferries these injured from the German medical orderlies down this way to it's near Ranville, and it's this is Ranville and Herouvelet, and Le Mesnil, I believe, is this junction here. So he ferries them down to this position here. And one of those is and three of those that he ferries down is Major Parry, Captain Hudson, and Lieutenant Jefferson. So, in review of the attack, Otway has come under criticism because it was deemed that the plan was just too complicated, and it relied too much on a lot of things going right. It involved, it had some assumptions that was that the drop would be concentrated. It relied on the ability to gather a lot of equipment that was being dropped either by parachute or coming in with the paratroopers or coming in with gliders. As I've said, the plan to land 3 gliders in this battery has been criticized as what, you know, bordering on suicidal, but the fact that it was to be conducted in combination with an attack meant that you know, there was too much that could go wrong. It was deemed possibly that the glider thing was just an added extra that wasn't needed. You know, it would have been better for the gliders to just have landed on the drop zone and all the men come in with him. So you'd have a concentration of 50 men, and then your attack into the battery could be done by maybe, you know, not just 2 points of entry, but maybe 3. And of course, all of this is, you know, working on the premise that the Germans don't know. You know, there's been a parachute drops going on. There's been bombardments of the position. You know, you've got gliders now circling over it. You've kind of completely woken up this garrison. In his defense, you can only plan, with what you've got. You can only, he wasn't to know that the distribution on the battlefield would be so high that he wouldn't have enough men. He wasn't to know that a majority of his heavy equipment wouldn't make it across, so that he was quite unlucky. So what he actually achieved on the day, after all these disappointments, is amazing. And many of his fellow officers and sergeants reported how, calmly and quickly he adapted his plan and pushed on forward. And of course, he wasn't to know that the guns weren't what they were. That was a failure of reconnaissance, possible failure by the resistance, knowing what was the actual capabilities of this battery. Because if they had known that these guns were the lesser Czech variety, then they may not have wasted the resources at all on attacking this position. Now, but it's lesser known than the attacks on the bridges, because they went perfectly and this one didn't go perfectly. But you could argue that the attack on this position is the most amazing thing that anyone on this battlefield, this part of the battlefield, is asked to do. The fact that it is achieved, the battery is silenced for the majority of the morning. It's to the 9th Battalion, Parachute Battalion's credit, and to their commander. Let me just Rudolf Steiner, Lieutenant Rudolf Steiner, who was the commander of the battery, he was in the observation post at Franceville Plage. So he is he's the guy who instructed the guns, the flat guns or whatever, mortars, to fire on his own battery position. He came up with a theory that all the paratroopers had to do was to destroy the optics. Something as simple as that would have put the guns out of action for longer. He reoccupies the battery when the 9th Parachute Battalion withdraws, and he says that he found that 3 of the 4 guns were able to fire, and at least 2 on D-Day fired on Ouistreham and the Orne estuary and the canal. So that sort of shows you that the range these guns had was basically to this this area here, and that it effectively he admits that that the guns couldn't affect Swordbury Beach. So was it a success? Well, of course it was. In terms of the, knocking some of the guns at them, and you had to do it because you didn't know that the battery didn't have the guns you thought that they had. 70 odd casualties in this fight. You can argue until the cows come home whether it was worth it. But it had to be done. So, just to summarize, Lieutenant Colonel Otway, he receives a DSO, and Major Alan Parry is awarded the Military Cross, and the military medal is awarded to Company Sergeant Major George Miller, Sergeant Sid Knight, Sergeant Patrick McGeever, and Corporal James McGuinness. So let me finish there. Thank you for watching. We've pretty much finished now our talk here on Operation Tonga, and in the next episodes on D-Day we'll be discussing the US airborne divisions on the west flank of the invasion beaches. So like and subscribe for more of the same. We won't necessarily next time be talking about Normandy. We have plans to talk about the Napoleonic Wars, but we will be coming back to finish off the talk on D-Day, and then we will be talking more about the actual campaign of Normandy itself. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.